All right, we'd like to welcome everybody to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. Let's go ahead and get started with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you all please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. This evening, I've asked Commissioner Wright to give us a thought and or prayer, so we'll turn time over to her.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk, as we all know right now, there's a lot happening in Europe and a lot happening in Ukraine that is devastating to see. And despite all of the conflict and what is happening there, I was inspired by hearing Zelensky. Obviously, President Zelensky of Ukraine has been amazingly heroic, a leader that I think could be emulated by anyone. And he said a lot of cool things. He said a lot of really inspiring things. And one of the things that he has said that I think actually relates to this body and to politics here in America, he said, "It's a victory when the weapons fall silent and the people speak up." I'm sure many of us here participated in caucus last night, spoke up, hopefully ran as delegates or nominated someone to run in our stead so we wouldn't have to. But when we speak up and do it with civility, with honesty, and an understanding that we're not always going to agree, but we can speak up. We can follow that example of President Zelensky and be change makers in our little city, in our nation, and around the world. And I'm grateful for that opportunity to be here on Planning Commission. I'm grateful that so many of us have passionate views, and we do so. We share these views with civility, and we speak up. And I think that's a great part of our political system, the process, and I appreciate that. And I'll say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet as Planning Commission and to serve our city in this body. We pray that we will be free from pride and personal gain, and work to think of the better and common good. We pray that the wars raging in this world will find an end, and that there can be safety for those who are in harm's way. We are grateful for those in our city who are constantly putting themselves in harm's way, our first responders, and please bless them. We're thankful for the freedom of our country, and please help us to be guided by Thee. And we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, let's get rolling. Not a super heavy agenda tonight, so should be good. Lots of fun stuff to talk about, though. Let's start with the first item on the agenda, which has been scheduled for a public hearing. It's a legislative recommendation for the Hogan Cabinet and Steel PDO and conceptual site plan map amendment. We will turn the time over to Corey.
Thank you, Chair Daly. Thank you, Commissioner Wright, for your comments. When you talk about dialogue and honesty and openness, I discussed something a matter with Lisa earlier. She felt like I was fine in the situation, but I do need to be open and honest and transparent with things. I do happen to know someone who works as a supplier for steel out of Cache Valley, and they do supply things to Hogan and other companies. I only have a knowledge of this individual. There's no connection of finances or benefits in my part, but Lisa said that I'd be okay at least being honest if I felt I needed to, and so I thought I would let you know that up front. It's hard to not know people around the world.
Especially in Utah, right?
Yeah, so, but as you indicated, the first item is Hogan Construction Company, Inc. has made an application to you. You should be aware, if you're not, not meaning a derogatory term, but Masco owns was a former rebar and steel manufacturer just south of where the new storage sheds in our West Centerville neighborhood plan is, or just south also of the 2 retail pads west or south of the megaplex. There you'll see a couple of older buildings there, not quite to the Trinity site, but you'll see a couple of older buildings there, and that's next to the rail line area. Hogan has purchased that property. It's probably been a couple of years now, and they have moved some of their steel manufacturing over to that facility, did some interior remodels to meet their needs. They've decided at this point there's about a little over 3 acres, almost 4. There's a large portion of undeveloped area in front of those buildings heading west to 1250. They've decided now to master plan that whole parcel and create an operation. It's listed as 2 phases, as we brought up in the staff report. It may be more related to construction rather than sheer development. But the 2 buildings there and the good 2/3 of the property will be devoted to their steel operation. They want to move to an automated fabrication facility, and then out front they would build a cabinet manufacturing shop for the project. This is allowed in our industrial very high zone, so that's where we're dealing with, is a project within our industrial very high. They've also submitted to you an application in addition to their site plan. They're requesting a plan development overlay approval. So they're running these concurrently. Regardless of what they want to do, if you're doing a plan development overlay, you automatically have to submit a master plan for the property. And so they're performing both to you. The purpose of the PDO is somewhat in a limited fashion. You're probably more familiar with the residential zones and development that seek some density and some other opportunities to add to the property. This is our industrial plan center. So think of a like project. The Parish Creek to the north end of the West Centerville neighborhood, the black and white buildings you see on the wedge between the 2 freeways. That is in a plan development overlay for the industrial. They sought some changes to code requirements to develop that piece that was fairly landlocked from creating alternative accesses and roads into that property. And so they created a master plan development. So it would be somewhat, not akin in what they're asking, but akin to an industrial plan development that we've done on the West Centerville. The main purpose of their plan development overlay is they would like a variation in the architectural standards of the industrial zones. Our industrial zones require a rock, a brick, or a split face masonry block as part of our architecture. This comes from the historic days that a lot of our industrial area was made of metal buildings. During the time, I think, of Mayor Priscilla Todd, she wanted to create a better face for the north and the south business parks. And later in 2002, we developed these architectural standards that sit within our current zoning ordinance. They'd like a variation of that. Also, another material that says, or other material approved by the Planning Commission, and tilt-up concrete has been accepted. And I think another listing is ceramic tile in that architectural demand. From their argument, they'll give you some of their reasonings for it, but staff does recognize that when you're dealing with the industrial high and the size of buildings, expenditure on materials like that and the efficiency of the materials becomes a discussion item when you try to build a facility. The large steel manufacturing will be, I think, 101,000 square feet is listed on the plan. The cabinet manufacturer shop is listed at 60,000 square feet. If you think of the Parish Creek, 52,000 square feet is the largest building in that Parish Creek. So we're exceeding buildings larger than that. If you just want a rough comparison, Kohl's is 99,000 square feet. So if you just think about those sizes, that's what we're dealing with. They'd like to go to an engineered insulated metal panel system for their buildings. They provided those cut sheets of some of the examples, and then you'll see at the end of their submittal, they've created the master plan at the bottom, along with elements that they are committing to in their project. I think it's the last sheet on their submittal. They want to commit to. So that's what they want, a variation to that. And so there are two options. One is to go and change the codes of the city and see if we'll introduce that product to it. One of the things that we talked about at a staff level is that applies to everybody, obviously, if you change the code to that. And for the smaller buildings, probably the rock and the brick and that type of architecture we want to keep. The larger buildings may be something we would need to reconsider. So the direction that was chosen during this process was to look at the PDO where we could vary that standard under the PDO. The issue that comes up with that system is, are we doing something better than what the IVH zone would accomplish? And if we are, the city can consider approving the PDO. Again, the PDO is not a guarantee. It's an option the city can choose. So they're coming to you as a commission because the PDO is a legislative action. And so you're reviewing not only the site plan in a master plan project, you're making a recommendation on whether this PDO meets a value or muster to consider the variations being requested. So that's what you're looking at. So it is a legislative decision. You'll be making a recommendation. Part of that, the largest component of thinking about policy in a legislative action is how does that fit in with the city's general plan? So you see it highlighted in the report in blue. The West Centerville plan was adopted, I think, started in 2008 and was adopted by 2010. I think we were finishing it up in 2009. So it's in place in 2010. One of the issues came up is how do you handle in the existing West Centerville neighborhood plan, how do you handle metal buildings that are existing without requiring a complete tear down in a non-conforming situation? And a good example to think about what was used during 2010, if you go to the sewer district plant, which used the sewer district office, not offices, their field sheds, those are the old UDOT sheds, and then UDOT north of them built their new sheds. And if you see that they skinned those old metal buildings with some block and then left the upper ends metal and then re-roofed, that was the example of 2010. We'd like to encourage that kind of system rather than just holistically tear down the buildings. So bring some value, but leave some value, but bring some aesthetics to the building. And the sewer district was the prime example used back then of doing that. So there were a lot of policies of how do we improve the aesthetic appeal of the neighborhood, even though we have some metal buildings. Another element that came into play is in 2010, before we talked about, in 2012, I think the megaplex came in, how do we handle the IVH zone? And the IVH zone was the Green, the Masco, and the Trinity sites. That's our only IVH area. How do we handle those as our highest industrial use? Now, we don't go to heavy industrial. You can't just raw manufacture materials. You know, you can't just bring in copper ore and process it. You can't bring in a rendering plant of animal fats and things like that. You have to already have existing material, and then you just reformat it into something else, was what we were doing. So Trinity was kind of the anomaly. We don't allow that kind of heavy industry anymore. Trinity's a non-conforming use to our use list. So we were wondering how we handle the IVH zone get them to be able to develop something robust with the rehab of the site. And so there were a few policies trying to deal with the IVH zone and encourage better development in that area. And so those are the kind of the quick summary. Hopefully you can read the fine print that was put into there on the general plan. From staff's review, the idea of moving to some type of material is not out of sync with the general plan, in our view. The question is to what extent do you mark compatible? Because that was another key component in those policies. How do you do something new, but still maintain the compatibility for those who invested in the block and some other aesthetics through time? How do you create that? From our standpoint, we think that this doesn't exceed outside the boundary of that West Centerville neighborhood plan. The other elements came into being is when it looks at just the IVH zone, you don't have large setbacks. Building code really controls, if you have an access point, how far you have to be from the property line. We have really very little setbacks. We have 10% landscaping. And then you're just dealing with, hey, how big's your building? How much parking do you need to match those uses? And we've had those ongoing discussions about industrial uses. So the question becomes, how do we do something that's better than the IVH standard? So I think one is that the insulated engineering panels, if it was just a straight wall of paneling, it would be efficient. You could put some colors to it. But I think what the applicant's trying to do is we can mix design elements and alcoves and features as part of it. We also plan, the cabinet shop will have a more office look to it, in some sense, where they'll have their offices in the northwest corner of the manufacturing plant, and that faces the street. It's obviously advantageous for them to look at where the detention is as it goes to the west. They put in a nice feature of the detention. Again, right now it's painted green. I brought up we don't have secondary water in that area, so it'd be culinary water. So we want to eventually look at some type of drought tolerant theme, maybe a little bit like the storage units to the north did of their site. But I think that's an enhancement because it's not only beneficial for them, but it's a bigger feature area for facing 1250 West. It's better than what I think has happened at the storage units. They're made with block. They have their drought tolerant landscaping. It's nice, but it's fairly basic. I think this project could put on a better face. The other thing we talked about in justifying the PDO is if you look at the ordinances on buffering and expectation, there's this idea that we want to create separation of zones in the West Centerville. So if you have we don't have residential, but if you have residential, obviously you don't want something built right against the line of the residential. You want to space these developments apart. Well, in this case, we don't have a buffer. It's already zoned. We're not producing a new zone. So how can we still, even though the IVH doesn't require a buffer, how can we do something in this project since it's adjacent to that retail area to the north? And so they looked at their utilities, their easements and so forth, and they're willing to upgrade the landscaping in that area. Now, we talked about there was some man doors so employees could take some breaks out there. We talked about they've had problems since it's dark over there for crime. People can run down the railroad tracks and create some crime. Maybe put some lighting there during the early evening and not the middle of the night, but the early evening hours, deter that crime. And so you see those elements coming into their master plan, adding to that. Another thing that we talked about is that screening is very minimal in our IVH. It's chain link and slats. That's all you're required to do. We talked about how they could do some screening of the facility where you can put the interior facility behind, even though it may be a nice building, but out on the front, the screening, the yard areas, the fencing, between the lots, that they could do an enhanced design. They were looking at what Hogan's already done somewhat in their industrial park, and not just do it as chain link and slats for the whole project, but they would do an upgraded fencing design compared to the IVH. So that kind of discusses the whole context. I wrote a long report, I think it's 11 pages. It gives you all the details. But I think we're at a point to have a discussion with the commission. Is this the direction that we could go? Could we use the PDO process to give a variation? And now the only variation that's in the submittal is the architectural variation. You do see that I call out that right now, we're going to still do with the rest of the IVH zone. So, you do your little fencing, you do your decorative fencing. I don't know why I called it little.
Cute fencing.
Cute
sure,
fencing.
Yeah.
Do your buffering. Consider the elements with this new architecture, but commit to good building design using those elements. But the rest of the ordinance would stay in place. So if we're missing parking stalls, we've got to figure out how to add the parking stalls. Unless that's a discussion we want to have as a master plan, is a variation to parking. But right now, that was not requested in the application. So it was just a variation of architecture. So given that, staff feels reasonably supportive that we're getting something better than the IVH zone out of the project. And so we're recommending the commission discuss and consider approving it in some fashion.
Okay,
So that gives you the lowdown. They can give you the details
yeah.
of what they're looking at on their project.
We'll save some questions for them in a minute. I'm glad you brought up parking, Corey, because what would one of our meetings be without talking about parking?
Right now, I just can
I was sad I
perpetually,
missed that last.
perpetually bring it up even if you don't.
Yeah. So in there, you mentioned that it requires 160.
61, I think they have 128, something
Yeah.
like that.
Now, did you happen to maybe run that through what we're proposing for parking? Does it come out about the same, higher or lower? Do you know?
I did not run that through the parking standard.
Okay.
That's a good question. The report was focused book, application,
Yeah.
book, application.
I get it. So 33 stalls short. And is that, so the standard that you applied in this case, that's based on square footage, is that?
Yes.
That's how we.
Yeah,
did
the
that?
highest use in this case, if you go to the warehousing and manufacturing, is 1 space per 1,000 square feet, not employee highest shift, because it says whichever is greater. Where I think we have the other ones, is we're dealing with manufacturing. The other ones are just trying to say, well, I'm partially office, and here's my small warehouse, and I only have to do 2 stalls for that warehouse. This is a large enough facility that requires all that parking by calculation, so we get a lot of parking out of it.
Yeah.
But I suspect that they'll tell you that since this is an automated operation,
Yeah.
they're probably not going to need a lot of parking. But I figured the applicant could address that, getting the advanced report and
Sure.
have that dialogue with you.
I mean, do you happen to know off the top of your head what we're proposing for our new parking for something like this?
I think it was the first, we were doing it 1 per 250 for the first 20,000 square feet. And then for whatever was after that, we went to the 1 per 1,000.
So it'd be more.
So it could potentially be more.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this one. Other buildings that we've talked about in industrial zones, I was thinking about this in terms of, this would be a great dance studio, but that's not what we're talking about here, so. Yeah, I think I'd like to hear from the applicant on, what they anticipate their actual needs being, and we can address some of the stuff there as well.
I think it's fortuitous that we're seeing this on the back end of our study, because we've been focusing on 20,000 square foot buildings and 30,000 square foot buildings. And now we're having a facility, Because if you think about it, our IH zone is capped at 50. So we're dealing with 10,000 to 50, and that's been our focus in the parking study. IVH zone's uncapped, and now we're dealing with a 100,000 square foot building. And I think that introduces a whole different animal when you think about parking, and particularly when you're looking at manufacturing that's thinking high-tech automation facility. You know, they might have 8 or 10 employees.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and they can speak to that, I don't know how many they actually have. I mean, company-wide, it's a lot, but if operating the facility, all of a sudden now, that calculation starts getting out of sync when you're heading to a 100,000 square foot building.
Yeah, I agree with you, Corey, and I think that's part of the reason why I was kind of hoping that we had talked about that, but obviously we didn't, and we maybe, not for the very high.
Yeah,
There isn't a lot of very high in this.
No, it's the Trinity site and this site now with a little bit of the old Mark Green triangle,
Yeah.
and that's all that's IVH in the city.
So, you know, I'll be honest with you, I like the way this looks, and so I want to, you know, figure out a way to make this work and obviously be fair to these applicants, other applicants, and whatever else.
Right.
So we can have more discussion about that. Does anybody else have any questions for Corey?
My question is, kind of going back to the overall plan, I think we had this discussion kind of back in the day when we were trying to figure out if we wanted to have those storage sheds there. And I'm trying to, I know you've, you know, kind of written up the staff report, but just talk to me for a minute about, you know, how you see just like 10,000 square foot view, which doesn't really make sense in this 10,000 foot, I don't know,
There you
what,
go.
like the
Whatever.
whatever view,
The big
the
picture.
big picture on this. Tell me how you feel this fits into the big picture vision of that west side plan.
I'll answer that more as editorial, if that's okay, than any factual or, you know, objectives. So now we're going to go on the liberal arts side of planning rather than all the legalese issues. First, addressing the West Centerville plan. When we talked about this area, this property would be included in that, so we were looking at the southeast section. So Megaplex comes in, the trails now come in, new storage units are not built. Trinity's been kind of in a low operation point because they just created a warehouse facility because they stopped producing the galvanized operation in their product. And there was a lot of discussion about what we should do with that area. The West Centerville Neighborhood Plan update of, I think, 2014 was really partly in response to, not wholly, but had a good anchor to saying, we have controversy on Main Street, lingering over from a light rail discussion on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And what was happening is, let's go back into our West Centerville plan and our general plan, and one, let's eliminate anything that references light rail.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one, and that amendment happened very quick, just before the West Centerville plan update started in 2014.
Or train.
Or
hub.
train, and so we got rid of everything that we could on that, referencing that concept. As part of that, an anchor was, if we can capitalize on front runner, so we're coming in a day late and $1 short because we didn't participate in the process of getting a station stop in Centerville for the front runner. So now we're coming in a day late and $1 short, trying to say, well, can we still plan something in the future? Because if we can put a front runner station out there, master plan that area, we can hopefully avoid the argument that light rail ever happens on Main Street.
Right.
And so that was a good anchor impetus, as well as we had some undeveloped area or area of needed rehabilitation. As you recall, we entered a joint study with West Bountiful and hired WFRC, Wasatch Front Regional Council. And we went through a whole planning process and involved UTA, talking about a station stop, where would it be located, what would it take to do that. The result was from UTA is we'd rather have the station stop north of Parish Lane, not south of Parish Lane. And if we were to do a station, we would first need a double track line. And that seemed way out into the future in 2014 of a double track line, and now we're already talking about a double track line in certain areas along that front runner corridor. But also what came into it is what is TOD development and what should it be to support a front runner station? And your densities were running 60 to 80 units an acre in those models. And they were modeling what would it create for jobs, what would it create for ridership, what would be the future need of housing, and it was coming up in, I think the lowest was 45 units an acre, but it was centering closer to 80 units an acre. It took West Bountiful in this process, because they had a council member a part of that process. It took them a while to understand how that played out. So we are basically taking what we've done around the Megaplex Center and introduced a higher a density, and then we're going to capitalize on that and move that further to the south with this TOD. And that finally did not land well with West Bountiful. In fact, most of our meetings were
Not happy.
West Bountiful residents, very few Centerville residents. City Council at that time eventually tabled the plan, is the best way to put it. Let's not adopt this plan. Let's rethink this plan, and we'll get back to it later. And it wasn't but a short time after the storage units came in and got built. And then, there was some light controversy at the time about, well, maybe it shouldn't be a TOD, maybe we can do an auto mall, because this was being spurred off of the Mark Green piece, and the lots 2 and 3 south of the Megaplex had come up on a locator for Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz eventually moved to Farmington as their location, and that small controversy created that Centerville created a problem for Mercedes-Benz, and that ruffled a lot of feathers. And what really happened is that when Mercedes-Benz did all of their analytics, they felt more comfortable with the Farmington site, even though this site had been a potential radar site. But I can't say that there wasn't some influence of the city, because that would be too black and white about it. Lot 2 and 3 were prohibited from auto sales because it was the Larry Miller Group and U.S. Development that brought in Megaplex, and the city at that time did not want it to be an auto mall. They did not want it to be converted to a auto mall. And so they prohibited vehicle sales use because Larry Miller was involved with the Megaplex. So they had to develop it with the other uses that we had. And so did that play somewhat of a factor? Yes or no? I directly called the broker at the time, said, hey, did we really run you out? Because that's the rumor mill. And he goes, oh, certainly there's a lot of factors. You were just one of 3 sites, and Farmington became the easiest site to look at. And so financially, pro forma, everything that they were looking for, they felt like that was a better site. So I don't know the full truth of it, but start of talking about an auto mall. And JF Capital, who owned Lot 2 and 3, were thinking about that, but it came down to some other issues, so they went ahead and proceeded with their retail, which they're sitting at right now.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, they're rethinking that. They've gone through this whole process, and now they've
Talked about queuing lines and everything.
and they have a building permit, and they've halted on that because they're rethinking. I don't know why they're rethinking, but I do know that Trinity site is likely up for sale. So that may be the impetus of it. So that's my big editorialization. How does it, these are all the history and the
The
facts.
historical editorialization. Now I want you to go
Yeah, the editorial is,
the future
yeah, the
editorial.
first thing that staff looks at is whatever we envisioned, we didn't adopt. And so obviously my report's centered around where we're at. What's the current zoning? What can be done? And obviously I've created a favor of the PDO because I think we get something that's balancing what it's adjacent to with what it's zoned to do, and think that's pretty good. Does that potentially create some problems with the Trinity site, because that's really the last place to develop unless the old storage units wants to redevelop? To some degree, yes. The fortunate part about the Trinity site is it's fairly large, and part of the Trinity site sits in West Bountiful. And so I would envision that regardless of what happens with this piece of property, there's still some master planning that's going to take place, likely in partnership with West Bountiful. And I still think that there's still opportunity to still create the transition of uses, and if need be, any buffering uses with this site. Is it what we could have had if we would have had the dream fulfilled? No, but I don't think that station was a reality to begin with. I really don't. So I think the best we could have done if we adopted a vision would have been more or less what we did with the megaplex. Mixture of some commercial uses if we could get the commercial synergy there, or it would have been an auto mall if that could have been something developed. But so my editorialization is there's still some room to do something decent with the Trinity site, but obviously everything that's taken place makes a little bit of a shift in vision. Did that help? I talked way too much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of the history. I don't know that everyone is, so it's good for them to hear it. I assumed that you would, do an editorial because I asked for your opinion. I guess I'm more just looking at, this is where we are, but is this where we have planned for us to be? Yes, things have changed or whatever, but.
Well, I think that, and again, it takes how long for think of Trinity. So, giving Hogan the benefit of the doubt because they can come in under the IVH standards. They've just got to figure out a way. They're modifying that. I think it's a better design, and being a state-of-art facility, and Trinity being a place that needs cleanup. I'm guessing, I don't want to put that on record that I know, but I'm guessing if you're doing about galvanization and chemicals over a long period of time, there's likely some type of cleanup that needs to take place. It's two factors coming in. A substantial increase in use that can justify the cost of redeveloping that property, or it is more of another technical high-tech use that can cap it and function on that piece of property, and it's still large enough that if there's one facility that can create a high-tech operation, we can have another facility that also can be compatible in a high-tech operation. So I still think there's room for that. However, I also know that abuts the residential neighborhood of West Bountiful.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to see some, if they do their planning, and I'm assuming since I know Dwayne, the city manager there, they'll do their thinking cap right. There may be kind of this partnership between doing something really nice on the larger piece and then transitioning something that's compatible. Because they have a little industrial area that sits on that corner of Porter. They can do something transitional around that piece that's within their city, and we'll still be okay, in my.
I guess if I could just add, I think it's a really good question, especially for those of us that were here for the West Centerville Neighborhood General Plan rewrite that made, it was completely proposed for new development, but it didn't pass. And so what they're proposing is permitted. What they're asking for is to do a better design. And so, again, it's a really good question, and from a big picture, this wasn't what staff was recommending 5, 7 years ago. We weren't recommending the storage units.
Right.
We weren't recommending continuation of industrial. It did not pass. This is where we're at, this is what our code allows, this is what our general plan allows. And again, they're just asking to build a much nicer building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I was looking for in that, kind of along the lines of your question, is in some other neighborhood plans, particularly the more residential zones, it'll talk about envisioning a transition from agricultural to
Or from
residential zoning.
industrial to.
Yeah, there's not a mention of that in this West Side plan. It doesn't say, the plan is to transition anything. The plan says, let's make it the best we can make it with what we got, and, you know, there's a lot of talk about metal buildings, and I looked through the rest of the plan real quick to make sure, but Corey's got all the pertinent stuff in the staff report, but it's all about making the metal buildings work, allowing, you know, updates without onerous requirements and whatnot, but there is no discussion about, we see this transitioning from industrial to retail or whatever, so.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for, kind of.
That's kind of what I was looking for too, and yeah, the different plan didn't pass. But I know that that's been discussed about, that's really kind of what, you know, we're trying to deal with that residential, deal with that kind of need and that push in the pull.
Well, I think it's an education process, because I know a lot of the comments, when we propose general plan amendments, the comment is, well, let's just wait until somebody proposes something.
Yeah,
Which means if they want to do something different, they have to come to us. But if somebody wants to do something that's permitted under your general
They
plan,
will.
if you do not plan for it, they can build what's permitted now. So let's just take that as a learning process. If you want something different, you plan for it and you adopt it.
Sit
And-
and wait is not a plan.
No, no choice is a choice. And this heavy industrial use is permitted under the table of uses here, because I know there's an environmental concern.
Well, yeah, heavy is relative. I mean, this is our most intense zone, but Trinity wouldn't be allowed even under our most intense zone.
Uh-huh,
But manufacturing is
will,
our most intense, and it's a permitted use.
okay. Thank you.
You couldn't build firework plant here.
A what?
Couldn't build a firework plant here.
No fireworks. Got it.
Darn.
All right, any other questions for Corey? All right, then let's take this opportunity to invite the applicant to come forward and address any of the items in the staff report that Corey's talked about. In particular, I would like to make a request to talk about the phasing part of the process and what the plans might be for phasing or not phasing, and how that might work. And anything else that you'd like to discuss from the staff report. So come forward, introduce yourself, please, and I'd like to hear from you.
Hello, my name is Blake Davis. I'm with Hogan Construction. And we're actually probably spinning this off as a separate entity. And the cabinet shop is also a separate entity, so I'll kind of address it from that point of view. So the phasing plan. Yeah, is this the report that?
Yes.
The report that we sent over?
Hold on.
Yeah, let's just go to the site plan, right? I'll walk over here.
There's a little pointer right there.
We need you to be by the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, these?
There we go. Okay. Okay.
I think I can explain this.
You're better than I am.
If you click on this.
Okay, so from a phasing standpoint, the reason we have phased this is just, we plan to build the buildings in succession.
There you
I just don't think we can get both buildings done in the 2-year time period that it would take under permit. So we have phased the cabinet shop. We'll likely start designing the cabinet shop immediately after this goes into construction. So if you look at the diagonal where that building is by the detention pond, there's a sewer line that goes through there. It's a sewer main that goes out to the sewer plant. I think we would be permitted to build on top of it. I don't really want to. So what we had planned there, we've kind of shifted this around from a square building now to this kind of funky shaped building, but we shifted parking over to this side for customers who come in, and we would make that slanted corner a office area. That would be where the public would come in, see some of our showrooms. We're also a Samsung appliance representative. So public could enter, and our office employees would enter and park on that side. And what we anticipate is more of a glass wall feature in those offices. Just one, to kind of dress it up from the road. That's mostly the predominant way people come in. And also to kind of show people where you enter the building. It's very intuitive, right? So that would be the office portion. And then we have a large, also state-of-the-art facility in most of the back portion. The office portion, we haven't quite got the details down on this yet, but the office portion would probably be roughly 10 to 15,000 square feet, probably more than the 10,000 square foot of that area. And then the back side is a lot of automated equipment and kind of more employees working in the cabinet industry. Although we do have a lot of robots that do all the material handling, picking, all of that's hands-off, and it does that at night and stages all that area while the employees are gone. And then the machines kind of pick things up during the day, and the employees pass them around to different machines and then assemble. So most of our parking need is for the cabinet shop. The steel fabrication shop is a mass portion of, probably 2/3 of this facility is run by 2 people. This whole line that you're looking at now is 2 to 3 people all day long. And if we shift it, it's the same. It's just, sometimes you might have one person there on a night shift. What's that? Yeah, they're basically at these computer workstation, and there are signal lights going clear down the line that tell them if there's an issue that they need to address, and then they walk down the line, or they actually have little scooters, and they go down the line, and they'll check things out, and they just kind of zip up and down, just making sure everything's running correctly, changing out parts and pieces. So far, the robots don't drive, so.
So far.
Not yet, huh?
I like
Yeah,
that.
you never know.
Some places they do.
AI.
Yeah, they may become alive someday. But so far, we don't have that issue. That's why we've kind of scaled back that parking need. I think we're probably anticipating a maximum of 40 to 50 workers in that whole 100,000 square foot area.
And most of that would be the cabinet.
And no, that's
That's
the
on the
steel fab.
steel side.
The steel side, and then on the cabinet side, we'd anticipate about the same, just in a much smaller space. So,
Majority of the parking is dedicated to the cabinets.
I anticipate all of it being built out within 3 years.
So, sorry, you can finish and then I'll ask a
The
question.
architectural design elements on the cabinet shop, especially on the road side, we would like to dress that up a little bit, just because it's public facing for us as well. We don't have a lot of customers coming in. Most of our customers are big home builders and interior designers and people like that. But we also have a kind of a unique culture at that shop, just to try and retain employees, and it matters where they go to work. So they value that. So we want it to look nice.
I think one of the things we've tried to do with the cabinet shop, I know you're concerned about the view from 1250, is hide things like dumpsters and docks and that type of thing. So those are all screened. And then I think Corey also mentioned kind of a separation between the two. So we've done a heavy landscape strip with fencing, separating the steel fabrication shop from the cabinet shop, and again, a buffer to the road.
And as far as the flow of the site, the public side would be that north side where you see the two arrows at the top on the cabinet shop. And then you have one line coming in on the south side. It's a two-way street as well. And that would serve for most of the heavy trucks. We try to keep those, for safety reasons, away from where people are entering the building. And then in the short run, the fencing on that south side, until we know a little bit more of what we would be looking at with the Trinity site, we would probably try to do some kind of chain link, mostly for liability and security reasons. And then we would replace that as soon as we know what we're looking at over there. There may be synergies with whoever goes there. I think it would, I kind of want to hold off on that. I hate chain link fence, just so you know. I don't want chain link fence there. It's not good. And it's a security concern for us. You know, we have heavy steel back there. We want to keep people out as much as we can. And we have had people come to our facility from the apartments, from the freeway. We've actually had people crossing our site, running from the police or running from their husband or boyfriend or whoever. It's crazy the amount of traffic we've had there out in the sticks, you know. So our intention is to create a nice facility there. If I had my way, everything all the way between our office and Parish Lane would be cleaned up as well. And I think this type of facility would bode well for that. These panels we're putting in are 2 times the energy code for the R value of the walls. And right now we spend, how much do we spend on heating, Tyler? Yeah, probably $800 a week, and it's just going through those panels and out the top, through the cracks. I mean, if you guys have seen those buildings, they're horrible.
I think
So
another
we're trying
thing,
to address that as well.
excuse me, another thing to mention is you were talking about how other facilities on that side of town might be dressed up. This is a system that could be used to remove the old skin, put a new system on, be much more energy efficient, and improve the looks of that area dramatically.
Yeah, this skin will work on existing metal buildings, engineering-wise, pretty much without any modifications in most cases. So it is a good option, and you know, part of the other reason we're going with this system is that to put in, say we put in a tilt-up system, which is what our current office is, the spans we need, the clear spans we need, the tilt-up system won't structurally support that. So we'd have to build a steel structure inside the tilt-up structure, and it's extremely expensive to do that, where we can build basically a steel structured building here and then try to make it really energy efficient and still look nice as well. And then to address the landscaping on the mixed use side, we planned this regardless of what was over there, just so our employees would have somewhere to go on that north side in the shade. We plan on doing a lot of trees and planter areas. We don't want to do a lot of grass where it's not needed, just because of watering needs. I think we're all cognizant of that this year, especially, which is going to be a horrible water year. So along that mixed use side, there's a picture, it's kind of hard to see. It would look very similar to that, maybe with some benches and possibly some awnings out there for employees to eat their lunch or whatever. And I think the mixed use, whatever it ends up being, if there was a restaurant there, people could sit there and eat as well.
The landscape company that's next door.
Yeah, and then, so we also have the landscape company where the mixed use is not. And
On Butler, right?
no, that is Sink Construction. They are a landscaping company.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, Lon Butler moved across the street, I think. So they have asked us if they could use that area and landscape that to be a showcase so they can bring people in to look at it. And obviously we would love that. They would take care of it. They would make sure it looks good for their clients.
Yeah, why would you turn that down?
Yeah, so, twist our arm. So we were excited about that. Facing that building, there are lots of things they could do with that area, so that works out well for everybody, I think. And then, anything else I missed, Frank?
Yeah, I think this is probably a good example of what the face might look like to the neighbors. So in terms of a transition, rather than just having another tilt-up building, I think that would present itself quite a bit better than some other options.
Yeah, and we will have, the clear story windows won't be quite
No,
like that, but
they'd be
we will
down
have
here.
clear story windows going across the backside of that for natural light also, just to help with
But in
energy
general, the
costs.
landscaping and feel would be
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah, we like to keep energy costs down as much as we can. Those machines obviously take a lot, so we try to save it in other areas. And I think we're addressing stormwater. We don't have all the calculations complete on that yet, but we're working with,
I think there's a
Kevin
lot of
on that.
utilities that'll come into the site. We're working very closely with public utilities group to make sure that we're covered on that, as well as fire department and everything else.
yeah, everything's flowing smooth there. So far, we haven't had any issues. You guys have any other questions that we haven't addressed?
Becky?
Yes, I do have some questions. So just to clarify, cabinet making is the shop, that is like wood,
Yes.
artisan woodworking.
Yeah,
And then the
your
steel-
kitchen cabinets
And then
and,
the steel is something totally different, not steel cabinetry.
no.
Okay,
No, we do a lot of residential, we have a large commercial side. We do, for instance, we do all of the cabinets for Bass Pro Shops, Sportsman's Warehouse,
Cool.
places like that, and we ship them all over the country. And so it's a really high-tech, state-of-the-art facility.
Cool.
It will probably bring, this total employees for both shops will probably be in the 80 to 100 range,
great.
the area.
And I really like, a lot of what you're trying to do to make that forward-facing and for the client and for people driving by, and I think that's gonna be great. What about, with the better insulated walls, does that help with sound?
Yes, absolutely.
And,
Yeah, that's 4 inches of insulation.
Okay.
It has,
R32, I think.
yeah, it's R32. I don't know what the sound rating is on that, but on hotels, for instance, we own a lot of hotels and they require a 55 sound rating, which is pretty high. And we're twice the spec on that. We haven't rated it because it's not required, but,
Tyler, most of, this doesn't make
This
a
is
whole
pretty
bunch of
quiet,
noise,
though.
if I recall.
steel is quiet? Oh.
yeah, this facility doesn't generate a lot of noise,
Okay,
especially where we're automating a lot of it. We're actually working with a company in the Netherlands right now. We're heading over there in a couple months to look at and give our input on the final touches of another machine that actually does a lot of the welding and fabrication. It takes the pieces from the burn table and the beams and fits them together, and robots can do 50% of that as well. the reason we're heading this way is we've had an incredibly hard time hiring welders. So this is how we're addressing it. It's going to cost us millions more than the employees would in the long run. It will save. And the employees will be happy. They still have jobs. Everybody, we won't lay anybody off. Their jobs will just, some of them will change to a little more high-tech job, but they'll still need the same knowledge and skills to watch what's happening so they know how things are working on the line.
Okay. I was anticipating it to be loud production, but it sounds like it's not at all.
No, in fact, we can take you through it when it's done. It's very
Well,
impressive.
it sounds great, yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll get a little bit of chatter with a heavy beam being dragged across the struts, but it would impact somebody within 30 feet of the machine, not
Okay,
neighborhoods.
great.
So- Yeah, we could talk just freely.
Great. Interesting.
Anything else?
That was all I had.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, we're excited about it. And there will be people coming from all over the world to see this. It's a really high-tech facility, very unique. There are very few like this. So we're actually building a viewing area into the conference room
Oh, neat.
on the second floor, so
For the
people can.
steel side of
Yeah,
things?
on the automated line side. And, yeah, so people can watch it, and then we can take them down onto the floor. We can kind of explain things, not get in the way, and look over the facility. And also, we can kind of use that as a quality control mechanism as well.
I guess I have one more question. This is just a gee whiz question. Are you gonna be like employing artisans for the cabinet? Or do you just do more of like industrial cabinetry?
Oh, we have, there is a customs area. So if you picture like boardrooms and reception desks, reception areas, most of those are custom woodwork. They're not just your boxes. But almost everything else, all your kitchen cabinets, stuff like that, those are typically just large run things. They'll go through paint lines and stuff like that, but
Like, will you have like a retail side where residents of Centerville could come and say,
there will be a showroom. It's typically for home builders. We do get a few walk-in clients. It's kind of a large facility for that kind of customization, but home builders will send people into our showroom sometimes, or we'll try to duplicate our showroom in their space if we can, so we do that as well.
okay,
But yeah, it's kind of a combination.
great.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to say my name?
Just for the record.
Just for the record?
Just say it in the microphone.
Just for the record, my name is Frank Murdoch. I'm the architect working with Blake.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I have to compliment Corey. I learned a lot in terms of how to present.
Nice. All right, so this matter has been scheduled for a public hearing. We'll take the time now to open up the public hearing and invite anybody who would like to speak to come to the microphone and do so. Nobody has to, but you can. Okay. Seeing nobody coming forward to speak on this, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Any further questions from the commission for applicant or staff? Okay. I do have one question, Corey, for you. Along those lines of phasing, it seems to me like when I was reading through your write-up, the main point of phasing is obviously so that we don't end up with a non-functional development because we phased it and didn't finish the important part or something like that. Yeah, and that really is kind of the intent of that, right?
Yes, correct. It's, the assumption of the ordinance is the whole site's developed at once, but at final site plan, they can request a phasing plan. So that's why I was saying I was not sure it's construction or phasing.
Yeah.
If they come in with a phasing plan for development, not just construction of building, where they exceed the time frame needed to complete the project, they can request a phasing plan from the commission, and that's when we're going to look at, okay, which phase are you building first? Does it have its sewer, water, gas, parking, landscaping? So if in case the other phase never happened,
Does it stand alone?
does it stand alone?
Yeah.
And so that's that final site plan, they can request a phasing, and then your discretion is whether they can support each phase independently.
That's final, so that's not really for today's discussion really in depth, right? We could
You
kind of
could, you
mention
could consider it, because I don't think we make a finalization, I just think it should be noted in the discussion. Is, for an example would be, is I would assume the detention in front of the cabinet shop, even though the cabinet shop might be a second phase, it needs to be constructed and installed
Phase one.
in phase one.
Yeah.
You know, the hardest part that I see with phasing is, I think they can support everything. It's the issue of, once you construct something, how much damage do you make to construct the next phase?
Right.
And I think that's the hardest part about phasing in this case.
Yeah, so I think in my mind, and, you know, other commissioners, feel free to disagree with me, but if the steel fabrication shop is phase one, and just for whatever reason, the cabinet shop never gets built, the steel shop stands alone. It's, you
Correct.
know, it's there and it can do its thing, as long as we get, you know, the detention like you talked about. And that's something maybe just for a discussion when we see the final site plan, if they're asking for that, that's an instruction, you know,
Yeah.
maybe address that at that point, but that's not,
Right, and I think the phasing is fairly minimal, because since the steel shop is the first one, the detention goes in.
Yeah.
The access lanes to go to and from, in my mind, we'd likely see the landscaping and fencing being installed that separates the front from the back piece.
yeah.
We're probably just looking at the construction of the cabinet building and its associated parking,
Yeah,
probably what that second phase most likely will consist of, and it'll look like a pad site for future construction.
but all this stuff that you're talking about doesn't seem insurmountable to me, and it seems like stuff that you could talk about with the applicant as we're talking.
The final-
As we're preparing for final and saying whatever.
Yeah, that's what we would discuss and work out with the final site plan, is what needs to be done in order to count it as supportive. Unless you see something critical, this is, you know, a PDO, you can always attach expectations along with the PDO.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Corey or even Lisa? You can ask her questions too.
I like how you popped in with your thoughts on my question, even though
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and just kind of address this one for the, you know, wrapping up the discussion here. In terms of the purpose of the PDO and addressing the architectural nature of this type of stuff, I think that, you know, the main thing that we're looking for in my mind is something better than corrugated steel or something like that, right? And based on the depictions that we've seen of it, the descriptions of it, you know, it looks very nice, and it doesn't just look like we're slapping a big sheet of steel up there and hoping it looks good, right? So I think that will work, and I think that's, you know, gonna meet the needs of what we're expecting from an architectural perspective. And the rest of it, you know, we can talk about more of that stuff at final site plan if we need to, but I like the idea of, you know, a new modern building in the area and kind of continuing to develop the area. So, any other comments from anybody?
Yeah, Corey, so just to clarify, the previous, well, the plan, the way it is right now for this area, you talked about how the intent was block and stone and so on, that was the former mayor's vision, and so basically to accept this material, we'd be making an exception to that, right?
Correct, and that's where you come down to the PDO being a place where you can vary a standard of the base zone, but you have to hit those qualifiers that we're doing something better than what the standard zone
Yeah.
would entail. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's the variation being requested.
Well, I agree that this what's being proposed here is definitely an upgrade from a tilt-up concrete building, so I have no concerns with it.
I was actually going to ask you your opinion as your professional opinion of the design and layout of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an industrial facility, and it looks like one. I think this metal panel system is, definitely better than a corrugated, standard prefabricated metal building look. It's an improvement over a tilt-up concrete building. So for an industrial facility, I think it's appropriate, and I don't, like I said, I don't have any concerns with that.
I appreciate that they've asked for PDO to do something nicer. I mean, it's not always that we get an application that's like, actually, can we have an exception so that we can make this better than what your standards are? And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the R value of the walls. It's important in our city, it's important in our world. I appreciate they've already talked with neighbors about making the landscaping look really nice. I mean, that only benefits us as a city. It benefits them, it benefits, to see like this collaboration among businesses that benefit both of them and the city is innovative. I like that. I think it's really cool to have that. And I don't mind the phasing. I know that can get messy, but I think it makes sense especially in this situation, it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of my initial concerns were addressed, and I think it fits with what we have planned and what is allowed in the area, so I'm in support of it.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay.
That was like an almost say something.
Yeah, you had it right there.
I was just gonna say, for an industrial thing, I think it's very nice looking. I like the look of it so much better than just, it doesn't look like an industrial building, and I really like that. That's all I was gonna say.
Well, and we have our city standards for a reason to make an overall good project, right? Like, they're there for a reason, and this goes above and beyond that, and I think it's consistent with the area, it's consistent with neighboring development, and with our code.
It brings the neighborhood up a step.
It does a little bit.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion? Oh, you got it.
Okay.
I hereby make a motion of the Planning Commission to recommend approval to the City Council regarding the request for I-VH/PD zone for the proposed Hogan Cabinet Steel Manufacturing Site as follows, 1 through 5, and then suggested reasons for actions A through D.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
My only discussion is that this is a good example of why our code might be a little behind the times,
Yep,
right?
that's what I was thinking.
Because this whole process is a lot for any applicant. Maybe it's unnecessary
Yeah.
if it was just permitted and in the code as is. Hard to define, though. That's the problem. Nobody wants the corrugated sheet metal anymore.
Right.
So, anyways,
Well, you're right.
that's my only comment.
Maybe we are behind the times because this type of paneling may not have been a thing back when we
Yep.
did it. So, yeah, sure. Okay, anything else? Huh? All right, then why don't we start down this end with Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
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 All right, the motion passes. Thank you. That was a little bit longer discussion I thought it was going to be, but that was good. We learned a lot.
Chair Daley, can I date myself? So when we were talking about this idea of field tripping up along the windows, I could just remember as a child going through the Wonder Bread factory and getting my little hat and my little bread thing in elementary school. Brought back that memory, and I was like, man, I miss Wonder Bread. Not really, but
I hope we really do get an invitation. That'd be fun to get a trip down there. I think it would be fun.
If they are just robots, they don't talk to you or anything, but
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool facility.
cool. As long as Corey gets a little hat.
Yeah.
somehow. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but
A little bread hat with
yeah,
polka dots on it.
We'll make him wear a hat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move along to the next item on our agenda, which is another public hearing, a legislative recommendation for zone code amendment, food trucks, the ordinance that will never die.
Continue. Yes, so Planning Commission, a few weeks ago, you recommended approval to the city council of some ordinance amendments adopting an entirely new chapter in our zoning code and our municipal code regarding food trucks. The city council did approve that ordinance, and they are currently in our code, but they did have a suggestion for staff to look into exempting governmental entities, mainly the city, from these regulations. I think that there was a brief conversation about this at the Planning Commission as well. And so staff's comment was, we typically recommend that the city just go through the same procedures as other applicants, but there are some issues, for instance, our baseball program, our 4th of July program, which I think was the main motivation for this proposed amendment. But anyway, the city council recommended that we look into exempting. And so when we were putting the code amendments into our code, I did notice this exact sentence in our temporary use chapter. So in our temporary use chapter, this proposed sentence, which is, this chapter shall not apply to activities lawfully conducted by a governmental agency. So I thought, we already have it in our code, let's just duplicate it for this chapter as well. So the question might be, well, should we be following our own ordinances? My position still is yes, but there are some exceptions, and I think that government can, under their authority to impose zoning regulations, exempt themselves from certain things. So I think we do this, with certain signage and things, but anyway, so I think as staff, we're okay with this. Again, it's already in our temporary use section, and so we are recommending approval of this one-sentence amendment to our existing food truck ordinance. And so it does require a public hearing, and hopefully this won't take as long as the last.
Well, we got a
we
good
move straight to the
history
vote?
of the agenda. Corey helped us there, and we had a lot of
Sorry.
things to talk about.
Oh, it's okay. So, Lisa, yeah, I mean, this is good discussion. I think we do need to be careful with sentences like this, because I don't think a lot of people, I mean, it seems to be a touchy subject when government exempts itself from
Yeah.
regulation. What makes government more special than everybody else, right?
Yeah, and I think, Corey and I support that. For instance, even like a mass gathering permit, why shouldn't we go through all those health and safety protocols? But, there are some exceptions, so this might be one of them.
Yeah. So the concern, just to help me understand everything, the concern is that for the baseball program, maybe opening day, they're gonna have a big event. We're gonna say, baseball program, you don't have to go and get a permit for this food truck event to do your opening day to do.
Yeah, there were also some concerns, two concerns. Cost, because, are there fees for this kind of permit, and/or time? So on some of those, and also the number of times. So not just with the 4th of July, but yes, baseball. And then we do have a new recreation coordinator, and he would like to start doing a lot more community events. And those community events may include a number of food trucks, because that brings people together. And so we did want to support that idea.
Centerville City has a party planning committee?
He's much more than that, yeah.
Okay.
He's doing a great job.
Event coordinator.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I think actually he has a new title, so I apologize for that. I think he is the Communications and Community Services, I don't know if it's director, but anyway, he's in charge of all of our communications, our social media, so we're pushing out a lot more information, and he recently gave a presentation on our new recreation program, and he's doing a lot more
He's doing a great job.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Like I said, I just want to talk about that. It's, yeah, anyway. Okay, any other discussions or questions for Lisa?
I think it's a valuable thing to discuss because I think it's important that we don't just willy-nilly
Yeah.
exempt government from
Right.
the same thing that citizens have to follow. I mean, that said, I think there is some level of comfort in exempting government because government is the one that's approving the thing. And so to sit there and go through the process when you know what's happening at the event, you know what the food truck needs would be, it'd be like talking to yourself, I'm gonna write down the food truck needs and then I'm gonna approve myself for the food truck needs. Seems a little bit redundant, and if we're trying to talk about efficiency in government, I could see an argument for like, this would help save tax dollars, this would help increase efficiency there. So I think in this small scope of an area, I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think the, like the exemption of permit fees and stuff, saving on permit fees is a valuable point for me, the same way that government doesn't have to pay for vehicle registration like the rest of us do, because it's kind of like out of one pocket and into the other
Yeah.
pocket. Yeah, that's a valuable discussion for me. But yeah, it is something that I think we should at least address and acknowledge that it's, you know, government for the people, by the people, not government, I don't know, whatever else it would be, but you know what I mean.
For itself.
Government for itself, in spite of the people. Anyway, okay, any other questions for Lisa? No? All right, then we will take the opportunity to open up the public hearing and invite anybody who'd like to talk about this to step forward. Didn't think so. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay. Anything else, or do you want to make a motion, Becky?
I still am going to go on the record that I think, even though this has been approved by us, approved by the city council, I think it's a little more stringent than I believe we should be on this. So I'm just going to put that on the record. I'm going to support it, but I still feel like it's a little bit more than what we need. So, that said, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-07 amendment as amended in the staff provided ordinance example. I don't know how that worked, but
Good.
as attached, which has been prepared by the staff.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Great, then let's start down this end with Commissioner Care.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We've got some training to do now. Open and Public Meetings Act training. And we're going to turn the time over, apparently not to Lisa, who's done this in the past,
This is
right?
gonna be so much better.
I don't know, we're going
I'm
to turn,
serious. It's
we're going
so-
to turn the time over to Jennifer to teach us about public meetings.
Hello, everyone. It's kind of weird to be on this side of the dais. I haven't met all of you in person. I'm Jennifer Hansen, the city recorder. I've emailed all of you, but it's nice to see faces. So we are required to do an annual training on Open and Public Meetings Act. And for those of you that have been around for a while, have probably had this training before. Today, instead of me just lecturing you on open and public meetings, we're going to actually do it a little differently. We're going to play a Kahoot game. For those of you who have ever done a Kahoot before, it's just a fun little quiz. So all of you are going to need to pull out your phones, or you can do it on a device if you'd like. I'll go ahead and get my screen pulled up here. Just a couple things before we start. Our goal here is not to embarrass anybody by pointing fingers saying, oh, you don't know these answers. It's just for fun. But that being said, go ahead and use a nickname or a fake name or something. You don't have to put in your real name because the names will pop up and scores will pop up, and we don't want to embarrass anybody for not knowing.
Jennifer, you need us to download the Kahoot app if we don't have it?
No, you don't need to download anything. I'm going to pull up my screen here, and all you have to do is, let me share really quick. All you have to do is go to the website, and then, okay, is this going to work?
Yeah.
Can you all see this on your monitors? Or I guess it's up there too?
Yep.
Okay, so all you have to do, you can either scan that QR code or you can go to kahoot.it on your browser and then put in that game pin, 5030336. And then
Can
it'll
I
ask.
participate?
So you actually
Yes.
don't even have to.
Yeah, last time staff, did we even had public works people at
Please
the city
participate.
council.
Lisa's not allowed to play because she knows all the answers. But Corey and Mackenzie, you are welcome to jump in.
That's
You don't have to put the pin in, you just scan it, it just goes
Yeah, you
straight
can
to
just
it.
scan the QR code, that works as well.
Okay.
Then
My
I'll
phone's
ask
not
for
that
your
smart.
nickname. Last time, when we did this in council, we had like 3 Brant Hansons, so.
Yeah, we should have said, use a nickname, but not someone else's nickname. Yeah, B. Hansen, Brant Hansen.
We had Brant Hansen with an S-E-N, which made him mad. Oh, there's a Brant, okay.
That's awesome.
Okay, 1, 2,
Without the
3, 4,
D.
5.
This
We
is
need
with
at
the D.
least, is anybody?
It might still
get in.
coming up here.
Okay.
Okay. And there were a couple attachments on the packet. Pretty much all the answers in here were in those attachments if you read through those info
You did your
sheets.
homework.
If you did your homework.
I mean, it's up.
No,
It's an open
There-
note test.
There are some questions in here regarding closed meetings, and I know it's kind of uncommon for planning commission to go into closed meetings, but still good information to know, so.
One other rule, in terms of scoring, the faster you respond.
Oh, yes.
So Jennifer didn't tell me this when we did our practice. So I was playing catch up the whole time because I didn't realize it was a time. But the faster you do, but again, you want to be accurate.
So each
Accurate
question,
and fast.
each question, it'll pop up the question, and then you'll have a second to read and I'll read them out loud as well. And then as soon as the answers come up, you'll have 30 seconds to answer the question. And so you get points for being accurate, and you get points for being the fastest accurate.
Okay.
You get points for being speedy. Okay? Any other questions?
Yep.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This is our OPMA training. I feel like I should turn on the
Down.
Oh, I don't have it.
It makes you more nervous. What is OPMA an acronym for?
Dang, I'm not very fast.
Oh, we got that. OPMA stands for Open and Public Meetings Act. Yeah. Open and Private Meetings Act is close, but that's not correct. Open and Public Meetings Act. Okay. Current scoreboard, Speedy K is Speedy K.
That's a good name.
Maybe.
Here we go, question 2. How far in advance must meetings be noticed to the public?
Actually, I don't know this one.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
We got almost everyone, 24 hours. Yeah, so usually Mackenzie and Corey are working together to get your agenda ready and get so what has to be noticed 24 hours in advance is the time, location, and what the meeting is that's being published in advance.
Now,
So
this
that-
was kind of a trick one, though, because sometimes there are zoning code noticing requirements. And so, the 3 or the 10-day that we're used to, but this is basically the Open and Public Meetings Act requirement for noticing and posting the agenda is
Actual,
24
right.
hours. But a lot of items, zoning and other things take a lot more notice.
Right, but if we wanted to just have a meeting to discuss parking, for example, 24 hours is all we need, right? For a discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for a public.
Assuming
For a
staff
public
is,
meeting,
yeah.
So we can schedule one for Friday if you want.
Yeah,
Yes, so the meeting itself needs 24 hours, and then some individual items require more lengthy notice requirements than that.
What about a public hearing? Like a public
It
comment?
depends on what the public
Depends on
hearing
what
is
it is.
for.
Okay.
Depends on the item. Some, like,
That was a
budget
tricky
amendments
question. I
require-
was like,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to this, because I'm
Exactly.
trying to figure it out.
right, yeah. So
Yeah.
this is just for the meeting itself. The agenda has to be made
24
public
hours.
24 hours in advance. And this doesn't really concern you guys, but, I mean, the places that it has to be made public is on the state Utah Public Notice website, be made available to a newspaper correspondent, and also posted in a public place. We post it here at City Hall. We also post it on our city website as well, just to be nice. Okay. All right, any other questions on this one? Let's go to number 3. Oh, scoreboard. Speedy K still in the lead.
Okay.
Nice.
gotta take 'em
Okay,
down.
question number 3. How many members must vote to enter a closed session? Nice, almost everyone got that one. It is 2/3. And just to be clear, this is 2/3 of members that are present. So it's not 2/3 of the entire board or commission. If one person is absent, it's 2/3 of whoever's here to enter a closed session. Any questions about this one? Pretty straightforward.
So I like that one though, because the intent of the legislature is, you really need more than a majority
Yeah.
to go into a closed session, because typically all of our votes are just majority of the quorum, so.
Yeah.
Okay, scoreboard. Speed K,
Oh, my gosh.
still in the lead, although CP is sneaking up there.
He's right next.
All right, number 4, which of the following is not a reason to enter a closed session?
Nice gifts.
I know, I like
I'm-
the
Do you get to choose those, or the gifts on them?
Oh, I chose them.
Well done.
One second. Oh, I hope everybody answered. The correct answer is none of the above, meaning all of the above are reasons that you may enter into
That
a
was a
closed
tricky
session.
That's a tricky one.
That was,
That was a tricky one. That was a lot of reading, sorry. Pending or reasonably imminent litigation, character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems. These are all reasons that we may enter a closed session. There are more reasons than that. Those are kind of the most common ones to enter a closed session.
and I was mentioning to Jennifer, because she was like, has the planning commission ever gone to a closed session? And we have, over the last decade, we have gone into a closed session with the Walmart matter to talk about security. We were meeting we had too many people for here, so we had to go to the junior high, I think, and we had to have the police department come in and help us with an exit strategy, just safety protocol, and so we went into.
Hadn't there been threats or something?
Yes, so we went into a closed session to talk about that. And then I believe we also went into a closed session for pending a reasonably imminent litigation on something related to some code amendments about palm trees, which might have been fake.
Do we have palm trees in Utah?
What, we have fake palm trees.
Yeah, fake palm trees.
We do have some fake
So,
palm
but
trees.
generally, the planning commission doesn't, but those are, and one that might is, if we're talking about, the purchase or sale of real property, but we haven't had any that I can recall. Those are the two.
Yeah.
Hey, cool. Any other questions on this one? I know it's not super common for planning commission to go into a closed session, but it's still good to know if you ever need to. All right, scoreboard, Speedy K, still in the lead, CP really close second.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, Moose is coming up. All right, Question 5, an audio recording of a closed session is not required if the purpose of the meeting is exclusively to discuss Okay, this one was also kind of a trick question because there were 2 correct answers. Selected, sorry, that was mean. If you selected either one of the 2, then you got it right. So if the sole purpose of the closed session is to discuss the character, it's professional competency, but I had a word limit, so I had to put competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, or deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems. We don't take a recording of those meetings, and we don't keep minutes of them. We have the mayor, or I guess the commission chair, sign an affidavit saying, this is the only thing we're going to talk about in this meeting, and then we don't have to keep minutes of those meetings. We don't really want to have minutes discussing a person in that. Yeah. All the other ones, we do keep recordings and minutes, but obviously they're not made available to the public. Okay? Any questions on that?
That was a tough one.
That was tricky. Sorry, I think that was the only really tricky one. All right, scoreboard. Oh, look how close it is between speed and game.
CP has a streak with 5 correct answers in a row.
Ooh.
It's like 50 points right there.
Hey, here we go. Question 6. Minutes are the official record of a meeting. How long are we required to retain meeting minutes? Nice.
This is so much fun.
When Lisa and I were just practicing together, she gets really competitive.
I feel like that's an accurate statement for many things with Lisa. It's competitive.
Okay, minutes are permanent record. We never delete them. We never destroy them. They're permanent. We keep them forever. End of story.
Do you keep digital and physical copies?
Digital as far back as we have,
Yeah.
but yes, we keep both. I believe we have minutes back to like the 70s. Digital minutes back to the 70s.
We've
And then
scanned
physical
them.
minutes.
Minutes
were-
back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know,
Early
when was
time.
Centerville founded? I don't know when the.
1950, it was incorporated. 1915.
1915.
Yeah, there's some, we still have the books of the original, like the first minutes, and they're
Awesome.
handwritten and they're beautiful, so, yeah. Okay. Oh, neck and neck. It is neck and neck. CP, you got this next time.
Speedy's been in the lead since the beginning.
BDK.
I'm gonna flip over my notes here real quick. All right, let's go next. True or false? Commissioners may text and email each other while a meeting is convened. Good, 100% on that one.
Lisa's so happy.
Yeah. This one should be
probably
obvious.
happened.
Oh, yeah.
While we're in a meeting, no texting each other, no emailing each other, no little side conversations going on. In addition to that.
Only hand signals, right?
Sign language. In addition to that, you should also avoid creating discussion threads outside of a meeting as well, like in an email discussing business extensively in an email or in a text message thread. That's just not really appropriate because the purpose of the Open and Public Meetings Act is to make sure that the business of the city is being discussed openly in a public meeting. So, yep. Any questions on that one? Sounds like everyone knew what was going on there. Okay, let's see the scoreboard. Oh, nope, still not. BK is still in the lead.
Someone's got to miss one.
I don't know if they're gonna. It's
CP still
about how
has
fast
this.
you
Get
go.
faster.
Yep.
They're gonna have to go faster.
Okay, question 8. What is the minimum number of members that must be present at the anchor location in order to hold an electronic meeting?
Actually,
Change my vote, dang it.
Remember, us be present in the anchor location.
We even had to look it up.
I don't know.
Oh, only one person got this. The answer is zero.
Oh.
This one is,
Recently amended.
this one is also a trick question because there's not a policy regarding it. So right now it's zero. There's not anybody required. So if you guys if you're out of town or sick and need to zoom in or participate electronically, there's not a set number of people that need to be at the anchor location. So likely it would probably be staff. If there's one other person here, great. But right now it's zero. There's not a policy. Do you have anything else to say on that?
Well, we recently amended our policy because they changed the state statute with the COVID issue. So, because there were these issues, and then they said, okay, you can have a completely electronic meeting as long as the chair does what we call the electronic or
But you were
termination
signing
letter.
every month during COVID. Yeah, it
But they also changed the statute to say, look, you don't even have to have anyone there. So the law is, we don't have to have anyone, zero here. But if we don't have an electronic determination letter, we as staff still have to be here in an anchor location. So I think we probably need to revisit that and see if we still want zero, but our electronic meetings policy was amended during the pandemic, so that no one had to be here, but we'll see. But right now it's zero, and so, yeah, that was a really difficult question, and
You keep saying that was your only hard
know.
question.
It used to
Mine
be.
are all hard.
I think it used to be a quorum. We had to have a quorum here to have an electronic meeting, and then it was changed to
Yeah,
zero.
that's a lot.
So I think at least one, if we have to be here, one of you should be here.
That's why I said one. I was like, come on.
Nice.
Sorry, you're right, that was a tricky one. I'm not gonna say there's no more tricky ones, because, oh, Speedy came.
Oh, Speedy got it.
Oh, that's right,
Oh,
he was
that's-
the only one.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
dang. Okay, here we go. 9, true or false, the planning commission should avoid talking about matters that are not listed on the agenda. I really liked the gift on that one.
It's a really good one.
True. Yes, so the agenda is there for a reason. We notify the public, these are the items that we're going to be discussing in our meeting. Occasionally, sometimes things tend to get a little off track or we discuss other things, but for the most part, we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Because if we start talking about an item that hasn't been noticed to the public, then it hasn't been noticed to them and they weren't aware that we were going to be discussing that. So, yeah, in general, as much as possible, try to stick to the items that are on the agenda. Any other questions or comments about this one? And in addition to that, even if something does go off track, we can't take any vote or make any action on anything that's not explicitly listed on the agenda. So, okay. Speedy K, CP, falling behind. Okay, question 10. A full audio recording is required from all public meetings except nice, 100% on this
All
one.
right.
Site visits, yep. Work sessions, special meetings, electronic meetings, we still need full recordings and minutes from all of those. Site visits, if you go on a traveling tour or a field trip or something, we don't take recordings of them. We do still notice them. If there's going to be a quorum attending those site visits, we notice it. We just say the commission or board is going on a site visit to this location on this date and time, no vote or action will be taken there. And then while you're on your site visit, obviously just try to avoid talking about business and stuff like that. So,
When was the last time the planning commission went on a site visit?
Well, all I don't know, but we really just planned on one right there.
yeah, you
I don't know what our last time was, but that's gotta happen.
yeah,
Next,
When
So-
we walked Main Street,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
true.
then we did that.
That's true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, obviously, if one or two
Did I miss that meeting?
just go on your own, that doesn't need to be noticed.
Walking
But
Main
if you go as a group,
Oh, okay,
then that does need to be noticed.
all right.
Okay,
Kevin's like this.
EDK.
got it, like, so close.
9385,
He's
highest
ready.
answer streak of 10.
Whoa.
All right, this is the last question, I think.
Uh-oh.
It's your last chance. How soon must the audio recording and approved minutes be made available to the public?
Gifts are so good. You're not even playing and you're nervous.
I don't know.
Oh, the correct answer is 3 days. After a meeting, we need to post the audio recording and the approved minutes within 3 days. If, for whatever reason, the minutes were not approved and it's going to be a while before they get approved, we still make the draft minutes available to the public. But yeah, 3 days is our time window for that. So 24 hours for noticing the meeting, 3 days for making the stuff available to everybody else.
3 business days, calendar days.
I think it's calendar days.
Is it? Good question. I should look that up. I don't know. I always just do it the next morning, so.
Oh, 3 days.
Yeah, they're usually out by 24 hours.
Right. I would have guessed business days, but
I don't
Mackenzie
know.
says calendar days, so we should.
They flip between some are business, some
Right.
notices is business, and some are calendar, and so who knows?
Thank you for asking that question. I need to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all for my OPMA training, you guys. Here's our winner's podium. 3rd place, Brant. 2nd place, CP. And 1st place, BDK with
Well,
10
with
out of
only
11.
71 point
Congratulations, you guys. And our runners-up were Sweet, whoever that was, and Frodo, whoever that was.
Wow.
Hey, that's all.
Hey.
Here's your virtual
I like it.
I like it too, that was good.
Yeah, we're gonna have
I
Jennifer
thought
do
that
all our
might be a
trainings.
little bit more fun than me just telling you all those rules, so. Hey, thank you.
Good.
All right,
Scott,
that was
till
our,
next year.
till next year.
And I guess I'll just stay up here.
I was gonna say, is our civic clerk training gonna be this much fun?
No, definitely. Sorry.
Are you gonna share screens as well?
Yes, I will share my screen for this
It's hard
one.
to make a game out of that.
Sorry, I should have just kept that up.
Just kidding. No, that was good training, I like that.
Do you need to like announce the next item or something?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, go, why don't you just go ahead and move right into our next,
Okay,
For
so, next item, we're doing the civic clerk. I believe I've emailed all of you just to give you a heads up that we are switching our agenda management platform. We've been using Novus Agenda for the last 7 years, and we're making the switch over to civic clerk, which is the agenda management software supported through our website provider, Civic Plus. So there's a lot of benefits to have that partnership with Civic Plus and Civic Clerk. So there's not a whole lot for you guys specifically. I just wanted to show you what the board portal is going to look like, how you guys will be able to access the agenda and the packet moving forward, and some of the features that are available to you on the board portal. Unfortunately, right now, it's not officially live, so if you log in, you can log in right now, but you won't be able to see anything because we haven't posted any agendas yet. But there is this training agenda on here that I can show you, and by the way, you all should try to log in and make sure that you can access the board portal, ideally before we go live, in case there are any issues and we need to troubleshoot, get your account linked up or whatever, but you should all have the permissions in there already to access the planning commission agendas. So, first of all, to access the board portal, this is the URL up here. It's kind of tiny. I should have put it up bigger. It's centervilleut.civicclerk.com. board view. And so it would be beneficial for you all to bookmark that page just so you can click it and get to all of your agendas when needed. And then that will take you to a login screen where you'll put in a username and password, and then it'll come up with this screen that you're looking at right now. This is where all of your agendas you'll be able to see, the planning commission agendas. And it's pretty simple from here. You can click on the agenda that you're looking for. It'll show you this breakdown to all the sections and the items. You can go into each specific item here and see the attachments, see the information and staff reports in there. There's a section down here for you to take your notes. If you want, these are private, nobody will be able to see your notes. Although we did have a discussion in city council about whether these become part of the record or not.
Yeah, we're a little concerned. They do say that it's, because we said, well, does anybody see it? They do maintain it on their
Are they
data.
grammable?
Well, and that's the question. I mean, generally notes are not,
Yeah.
but they may be discoverable. And so our recommendation is, I mean, just put stuff there that so sometimes on Novus, I used to, in the beginning, I would say, approved 5-0, or, so I always had what happened last time, those kinds of notes. It does have some great capability too with like actually circling
Yeah, I'll
things
show you
or
that in a
writing,
second.
she can show us that. So if you're just saying, hey, fix this typo or do this, but you may not want to put something, too substantive or controversial on there, because yes, notes are protected and privileged under grandma, but under a discovery rule. Anyway, it just worries me, but you use your discretion.
So take that as you will. They are, nobody's gonna be able to see them generally, and I don't know who would be grandma requesting.
But I did like
private notes.
if you don't want to print off your whole agenda and during this last couple of years, you've turned to electronic documents, it does have some nice
Yeah.
features.
So this is just the main screen here where it breaks down all the items, specific item. Here, there's the button to access just the full PDF agenda here. So that just looks like the normal agenda. There's a nice screen over here for thumbnails, so you can quickly get to stuff there. You can download or print the agenda from here if you so wish. Same thing for the packet. The packet is here as well, so you can get all of the attachments and all of the staff reports, again, thumbnails over here on the side, so you can quickly jump to minutes or attachments within the packet. Again, download, print options are all available here. And then also within here, if you go to the packet, let's say, oh, there's no minutes on here. Sorry, this is just a training agenda, so there's not a whole lot available. But there's a button up here for annotate. You can go to annotate, and this is where you can come, and if you want to highlight, then you can highlight here. Or if you want to add a text box and take some notes, then you can add in notes here. If you're using a tablet or something and you like to handwrite, then there's a handwriting option. Oh, that's a line. There's a handwrite. Oh, here it is, freeform. You can handwrite stuff. I mean, good. So, I mean, if that's your thing, if you like to use a stylus to write, that's an option there. Or you can type, you can print, you can do whatever it is you like to do to take notes. There are lots of things available to you in that annotate feature up there.
And so,
Those
and
get
again, those are
saved?
just
That's just for you.
visible to you, but know that they are saved in the cloud, and,
So, yeah,
We
so
can
if you
read
take
through it,
notes.
annotate, close it down, open it up, and all of our stuff will be there still.
Yes. So if you take notes or you highlight things on your agenda in your account, then you can go back to those notes at any time within your agenda and access those notes and annotations.
Because one of the questions that the council was, well, can we just take notes and then delete it after the meeting? And he's like, oh, sure, but yeah, we probably have a backup, like we'll have that, because I think he was thinking people might want to actually, what if I accidentally delete? I don't know, but anyway, he's saying, yeah, even if you delete it, there may be some record, so don't put things that you don't want discoverable. But,
I feel like that's just kind of a rule of thumb. I mean, if you want to take notes or write something that could be controversial or touchy, maybe do it on your own computer or write notes somewhere else or something. But
What about previous agendas? Because I know that's been something that's been kind of frustrating for me on Novus Agenda. I have to go back to it's harder for me to find previous agendas if I want to go back to historical data. Does this keep it all in one, or does it wipe it clean every week?
no, it should keep it. The only problem with this right now is, at least on the board portal, I don't know if you'll be able to go back to all of those past.
So the Novus
agendas.
agenda ones.
Right. And I need to talk to our civic clerk guy and see if there's a way that we can make those available to you. Because as of right now, going forward, you'll only have access to the agendas that are created within civic clerk. So from now going forward. And we do have access to Novus Agenda until September 1st. That's when our contract ends. So if there are specific agendas or staff reports that you want from those, it may be to your benefit to download those or back them up. If there are specific ones that you'd like for now, just until we get this all figured out.
You'll have the data for all, you'll have the
Yes,
historical.
we have all of the agendas backed up to forever. So if
It
you
just
need,
takes me a while to find sometimes what I
if
want.
you need something specific, or if you request an agenda from, 2 years ago or whatever, you can always reach out to us and we can provide that to you.
and just a comment too, if you're having trouble, or, something's frustrating, feel free to give one of us a call, because that's interesting, because we use, there's the user portal, and then there's the board portal. And so we don't use the board portal as staff very often. I mean, when I'm in a meeting, I like the board portal, because I like how it shows me the agenda and this, so I like that. But most of the time when we're working on it, I can research back to 2013 by keyword. I just
Through the
plug in
user.
through the user.
I know, that's what I found. You can't, it's really difficult through the board portal
Okay, and I
to
didn't
go
realize
back
that. But if
and
you,
find
and
stuff.
that might be something, just say, hey, call, but again, we only have that. So I don't know how much access the board view on Civic. Do you think they're gonna have any
Like
view, or will it be
sometimes-
similar to Novus where they won't have that
So-
access?
So once we start building our agendas and publishing them and we get them in here, there is a search function here where you can search for meetings and you can filter
that's
them
nice.
by, you can search by item or your notes, or you can also bookmark and tag things with them in here as well. So there's some really good searchability options in here, but again, it's just gonna be for starting now going forward, unless we can figure out how to give you access to all those past meetings. But
And will we only have access to the planning commission stuff, or could we also look at the city council things if needed?
you will only have access to planning commission, although we can discuss that as if we want to. I mean, I don't know if that's a staff decision, or we have the power to give you guys access to whatever we want. I just don't know if
Yeah, the concern is, it's still not clear to me how they're handling closed meetings. And I'm not satisfied yet with, once we give people access to city council, how do we say, but you don't have access to closed meeting items? And so, at this point, I think it's best just to say you have planning commission, but if that's something you want, we can add it to the list and make sure, but
also note that there is a public portal as well, and you'll always be able to access the public side of all the agendas
And get the
for any
packet,
meeting.
the public
They-
packet there?
Yes, the public packet and anything that's non-confidential will be available to anybody, to the public, and that'll be on the front page of our website.
So
You
there's
just won't
3.
have all these board portal functions for boards that aren't planning commission.
Yeah, that probably would work. I mean, over the years on the planning commission, I found myself every once in a while wanting to go and see what the city council got about whatever, stuff. So it's not super common, but every once in a while I've used it, but that public portal might be the way to do it.
Yeah, so right now, I can show you, if my little screen thing goes away, hello. Like I said, it's not public yet, but right now, if you go to our homepage and go to agendas and minutes, you can download any city council agenda or packet, any other board agenda or packet from here on our city webpage.
Okay.
And
How
this
far
is,
back does that go?
right now, this only goes to 2020 because that's when we got our new website. So, yeah, that's as far as back as that goes right now. This isn't gonna change, well, when we launch Civic Clerk, this interface will change a little bit, but all the information will still be there. It just will look a little bit different.
Also, until September 1st, right there on the left, it says Novus Agenda in yellow. And that has all of Novus Agenda minutes, meetings, since we started with Novus Agenda.
Oh,
The
wait,
search
click on that, what is
The
that?
search
This
function
just takes
is
you to Novus.
not the best, but it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what you get currently.
So that's the public, so even on the public version in Novus, you can search back till 2013?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you just have to change
It's just
the
a pain.
dates.
It's just, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say.
Okay, yeah, I
So
haven't.
I'll be honest, like, when I usually want something, it's like, we've seen something, and this is the second or third time that we've seen it, and I wanna go back and look at the planning commission, so then I have to like get out of Novus, and then I have to go to the public, and then I have to search through. So that's why it'll be nice to have everything in Civic Clerk, because then I can be able to say, I kinda wanna look at this compared to what the original application was, like right now in the meeting.
Right. Well, to be honest, moving from Novus to Civic Clerk will come with its own difficulties. I mean, changing software anytime has bumps and things that get frustrating, and there's gonna be a learning curve. But I do think that the Civic Clerk platform is going to be way more searchable. It's going to be way more user-friendly, even on the public side of things, just on the main website for people to be able to search and find what they're looking for. It'll be a lot better than Novus Agenda.
As a user posting, it's better than what we get to do. It's really kind of a pain to post using Novus.
Right now, yeah, so once we go live with Civic Clerk, once we post the agenda there, it'll automatically become public on the website rather than us having to duplicate it and repost it on the website. So that'll be good. Okay, let's go back to here. So any questions about this main agenda page on here, taking notes, accessing the packet, anything like that? Pretty straightforward. Just a couple other tabs along the bottom. There's a minutes page here, so the minutes will all be available there. The minutes will be attachments within the agendas as well, but this will just be a separate, easier access to minutes for you to review those. Notes tab down here, you'll just be able to access all the notes that you've taken. There'll be lists for the notes or in specific items. They'll have lists here. Oh, you took these notes here. Blah, blah, blah.
Can you make your own notes that it's like an ongoing notes, or are they always tied to an agenda?
Good question. I'm not sure. I think it's always tied to an agenda. I think it's gonna be a new note every time you create a new note, but, that could be a question I could ask Justin, our Civic Clerk guy. Media, I'm not exactly sure what this one's gonna look like. I assume this will just be like our YouTube links, so you can, rewatch meetings here.
Be nice, yeah.
But those will also be available on the website.
Videos of
public
our
side as well.
field trips that we all take together.
If you want to take videos of those. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. I really like the user interface here. It's clean and nice, and I think it's pretty user-friendly, easy to access. So if you have any questions, if you have any issues logging in or accessing anything, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, we're all kind of learning together, so I may not know all of the answers right off the bat, because it's new to all of us, but I'm happy to help you troubleshoot, and then we can always get in touch with Civic Clerk if we need to, if there are other issues, but that's all. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. We're hoping to roll this out soon, maybe by our next meeting, but we'll see. And we probably,
Mackenzie's excited.
for the next couple meetings, will continue to publish in both places. In case there are issues with Civic Clerk, you'll still be able to access it on Novus Agenda. When Mackenzie sends out the links to you before the meeting, we'll send out, here's the link to the Civic Clerk agenda and here's the link to the Novus agenda, just in case. That's like double work, but. But eventually we will leave Novus behind and go full Civic Clerk. So, okay?
Yep,
Thanks, you guys.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
P.S. She'll be running the audio-visual next meeting, most likely.
Was next
Oh.
meeting the one where you're going down
That's right,
south?
because you guys will
Corey
be
and I
in
will
St.
be at
George, so.
training. We'll be zooming in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be sitting there.
Yeah, the next meeting.
All right, on that.
Sweet
on
and
that
Sassy won this training quiz, so you know.
He did.
note, You're talking about the Civic Clerk.
BDK.
All the
I'm talking about the
civic
Civic Plus.
Oh,
He won the Civic Clerk training.
Yes.
so do make sure, has everybody, I guess we've authorized each of your emails to access it, and you have to set up your own password, so maybe, tomorrow or something while you're thinking about it, just try and make sure you can get in.
One of the discoveries is since your email's already been set up, it has its default password. You don't have that default password, so go through the process to forget
Reset the password.
Reset, yeah.
I think what we learned is you gotta reset your password twice.
twice.
Oh,
Mine was
Verification,
just once.
yeah, so the first one will be a verification of your account. The second one will be your new password reset button.
Yeah.
okay.
Be patient and keep clicking.
I haven't done it yet.
Anyway, all right, on that note, Corey, we have a meeting next time?
The meeting next time, we need you.
Okay.
The rest of the stuff you're very familiar with unless you have questions.
Yeah, no, I think, sorry, what are we talking about next time? Sorry.
I'll try to get back to the parking. I fell a little bit
Point.
project, so I don't know if it'll be the 23rd, but it should be by the 1st of April.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Corey, are we good to go?
I mean, and all the other thing, I'm waiting to hear back from WFRC on the
The
funding.
grant?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, now, let's go talk about some minutes, and I do have a question about those February 9th minutes.
So Katie Rest, who takes our minutes, she reached out to Jennifer and I saying, I realized I missed a whole section, so she revised the minutes based off of the chunk that she missed, which is the part that you noted. So she just got it closer to what actually happened.
Okay.
So, but because there was more substantial changes than what you amended, Lisa felt it was better to bring them back to you to reapprove the new amendments.
Because there were changes that you did not request and that you haven't seen.
Yes. They are not that big, admittedly.
Okay, so can you remind me where they were? Do you know?
I think it's page 3.
Yeah.
Pull it up. Yeah, it's in the public hearing section, page 3, roughly lines 42 through 50.
Okay.
Because we didn't have Eldon Marshall listed.
And we had Mr. Madsen as a neighbor or something like
Yeah,
that?
mhm.
Yes, I think that's, yeah, okay.
So because of those changes, I mean, you can keep them as they were before, but these need to be reapproved if this is
No, I think this
acceptable.
makes sense. That makes sense, and it's a cleaner way to do that, so, okay. Since we've kind of already approved these minutes, but we're just adding a section to it, does anybody have any other concerns or adjustments to this February 9th minutes? No? All right. Then why don't we do this? Why don't we go with a motion to adopt these minutes, and then we'll do the next ones. Anybody?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion to adopt the amended minutes, or the second draft minutes of the February 9th meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, now, let's talk about February 23rd, which was our last meeting. I love it when fits on a single sheet of paper. That's the best part. Anybody have any comments or anything on page 1? Anything for page 2? Really tempted to say at 7:46, the meeting adjourned, and at 7:47.
I thought they weren't going to put that in there.
No, I'm just kidding you. All right.
I feel like I missed out on.
Oh, yeah, so at 7:47, Commissioner Kara came in.
Ah,
So we literally adjourned, and then he showed up.
I was lurking out there waiting.
Yeah.
Please get this over.
Dramatic entrance, right?
I don't want to be in for this.
is that our shortest meeting to date?
No, your shortest meeting is 12 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to
Was I
guess
present
11.
I was gonna say, not since Becky and I have been on.
No,
I was gonna say, I don't think I was present at that meeting.
But our meeting last time was short and sweet, but yeah, anyway. Okay, I will make a motion to adopt the minutes of the February 23rd meeting as unamended.
No second.
Thank you, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?